Spacey, is that the jury reached a verdict on coercion. It found there was not coercion, and I think the judge said coercion today as a basis for a sentence at least a dozen times. We think that that is unconstitutional. We think that a jury verdict should mean more than our jury's verdict seems to mean, and so we are planning to appeal.
The courtroom was a pressure cooker of silence, tension, and disbelief. Every eye in the room was fixed on the man who once ruled the world of hip-hop and business with iron confidence. Sean Diddy Combs sat frozen at the defense table, the weight of the verdict hanging over him like a storm cloud that refused to break.
Absolutely. Files a cross appeal. What would happen in that regard if they filed a cross appeal and then could Sean Diddy Combs get a higher sentence?
He would not get a higher sentence, and they're not gonna cross appeal. We're gonna appeal. We think we're right, and they'll respond to the appeal, and it'll be decided by the Second Circuit as soon as.
Tell us about the conversation you had with your client after the sentencing.
Consensual. The judge clearly thought the sexual encounters weren't consensual.
Because he's biased.
What did you make of his remarks?
He's biased.
If anyone, I'm happy to go. So we think that's just absolutely inconsistent with the jury's verdict. I mean, the jury's verdict was resoundingly clear. There was no sex trafficking. There was no racketeering. Everything was consensual. Everything was adult, which is why he was convicted only of the prostitution offense. What we feel happened today was that the judge acted as a 13th juror, one that we did not choose, and that he second-guessed the jury's verdict.
Well, at least the judge was open-minded. At least the judge was open-minded for both sides. He gave consideration.
Did you have a chance to talk to Sean Combs? Did you have a chance to talk to your client? Can you tell us about the conversation after the sentence?
How was he?
How's your client?
How would it impact sex workers?
But he's okay now. Push back a little. But he's okay now.
Come on, man.
Stop pushing people, y'all.
You're making this a circus now, bro.
Space out. He does feel justice was served, though. He said he takes accountability, and I felt like Diddy definitely took accountability for everything, sir. And I would like to just let you know that everything was not consensual, sir. Please don't say that. It was not consensual. Even Diddy admitted.
This is the defense team, man. Let's ask them a question.
Yes, but he did allegedly.
All right, Queen. All right, Queen. All right, Queen.
Can you talk to us about talking to Sean after this?
I'm not. Obviously, we spoke to Sean. I'm not going to talk about what Sean and we discussed. It's a privilege.
We all feel comfortable bringing.
And tell us what
location are you going to recommend?
No matter which community it impacts.
What are the next steps?
Why weren't the sex workers on trial today? Hey,
hold on, bro.
Where were the escorts? Stop, bro.
Thank
you, guys.
Here's the question. Here's what's next.
Why weren't the escorts speaking?
We're going to try and find the right facility for Mr. Combs. We're going to ask the judge to recommend that. We are very serious about pursuing an appeal. So we have
pose himself, and then he stood up, he took a deep breath into the mic, which we did hear, which was audible, and he said right off the bat, I want to thank you for giving me a chance to speak up for myself. It's the hardest thing for me to do was to not speak throughout all of this. He wasn't one to be giving out TV interviews or talking about this case or anything like that. From behind bars, even prior to his incarceration, he didn't do any of that. And so it was interesting to hear what was he going to say. Was he going to say Cassie Ventura's name? Was he going to say Jane? We didn't know. And so when he said right off the bat, you know, the hardest thing for me to do was not speak. I want to apologize again to Cassie Ventura for any pain that I caused emotionally or physically. I mean, we all kind of know where we were when that Intercontinental Hotel video from 2016 dropped on CNN, and that video was hard to kind of take out of anyone's mind. And so him saying right off at the top of his speech that he apologizes for any pain that he caused to Cassie emotionally or physically, that was kind of the first time we were hearing him say her name in that respect, because even when you go back to the apology video, he didn't say her name. As we learned through trial, it was kind of advised for him not to say her name. But and then when it came to Jane, he said, I would like to apologize to Jane, not using Jane's real name, but said.
His once sharp suit now looked wrinkled, his eyes darkened with exhaustion, and the charisma that had always followed him seemed to have evaporated. The moment everyone had been waiting for had finally arrived, but it was not the ending Diddy had imagined. When the judge entered the room, the air shifted, the hum of whispers from reporters and spectators came to a halt. Even Diddy's high-profile legal team, usually so composed and commanding, suddenly looked uneasy. They all knew what was coming, but no one was prepared for just how devastating it would be. The sound of the gavel striking would echo like thunder through the room. And then, it began. The judge's voice was calm, but his words were sharp, heavy, deliberate. He began recounting the charges, the testimonies, the evidence. It was as if every single misstep, every dark rumor, every accusation that had followed Diddy for decades was being laid bare. One by one, the crowd leaned in as the reality began to settle. Diddy's face remained frozen at first, but the mask was slipping. The flicker of panic in his eyes gave him away. And then came the sentence, the words that would change everything. The judge's tone grew colder, his expression unflinching. This court finds the defendant.
Sean Diddy Combs is getting support from his kids. During the rapper's October 3rd sentencing hearing, several of Combs' children took the stand to advocate for their dad, who is facing years in jail following his July conviction on 2 counts of transportation to engage in prostitution. During their remarks per NBC News, his 34-year-old son Quincy told Judge Aaron Subramanian that his father is, quote, a changed man. His brother, 31-year-old Justin, went on to add that he hopes his father will get the chance to right this wrong and to be the man he truly is. 27-year-old Christian Combs also asked the judge to give his father grace in his sentencing, adding, "He is the greatest in the world. He is my hero, has always been my hero, and always will be my hero. He always taught me to treat women with respect." NBC News noted that Combs was visibly moved during the statements, putting his head down to cry as his daughter Chance took the stand. The 18-year-old told the court, "We have emptiness in our lives," noting that her father's 13 months in jail have been unexpectedly healing. Combs also has a 2-year-old daughter named Love Sean, and in her speech to the judge, her 18-year-old sibling Delilah stated in part, "Our 2-year-old sister is asking where Dad is, the same way we grew up motherless. It's a hole that can't be filled. We are tired of being strong. We have already lost so much, our mother, our father. Please give us the chance to heal together and move forward together." Combs shares Christian, Quincy, Delilah, and her twin sister Jessie with late ex Kim Porter, who passed away in 2018. While Combs was found guilty on the 2 counts of transportation to engage in prostitution following a
trial. And I don't necessarily think that him taking the case to trial should be held against him and should be deemed as him not being remorseful. But on the other hand, here he is having tried to fight all of the allegations and only now making any sort of admission to any issues. So I don't think a judge is going to be very much swayed by this newest apology, just like any other defendant.
So just let everybody know, my battery's breaking up a little bit. I couldn't hear that last part, Serena. We're going to work on getting this fixed. But I do want to give everybody an update. So Sean Combs says, "I hate myself right now. I have been stripped down to nothing. I want to apologize to my 7 children. I'm so sorry. You deserve better. To my mother, I feel you taught me better." Sierra, I go to you. As somebody who's been following this case from the beginning, what are you taking away from what he's saying?
I mean, this is a day of reckoning for Sean P. Diddy Combs, and something that we were hypothesizing before we finally were hearing the words that he was saying was that he may in fact point out the victims in this case and apologize. I mean, I believe we talked about that just minutes ago, and here he is doing just that. My question in all of this, I will be very interested to see what Elizabeth Milner says when she comes out, because right now she is in the courthouse, so she is there watching P. Diddy as he's saying these immortal words. I want to know his emotion in all of it. I mean, we can read the words. He's saying, "I'm sorry to Cassie, I'm sorry to Jane, I'm sorry to my children and my mother. You taught me better. I threw everything away. I ruined everything." But what is the emotion there? Is it just words? Is he completely stone cold face? Or is he crying? Is he upset? And I think all of these things are something that Judge Arun Subramanian will be clocking, because I mean, that's really what it is. Is he truly sorry? Is he truly remorseful for everything that he's done? I mean, he's now been convicted of a crime here, the transportation to engage in prostitution, which, to your point, Jesse, we haven't heard an apology for all of that. We've heard an apology for the domestic violence side of things. And I mean, I will just guess that Diddy might go on for a bit longer, as it is his first time really to address all of these accounts. But I want to know the emotion behind all of it.
It's a great point, and that's obviously something that Elizabeth Milner would know because she's inside there. She can hear it for herself. But if we're clocking this, if we're clocking that he's not directly addressing the federal crimes that he was convicted of, you know Judge Subramanian.
Sean Combs, guilty as charged, and sentences him to. The rest was drowned out by gasps. The entire courtroom went still for a split second before chaos erupted. Reporters scrambled to write, cameras flashed, and murmurs filled the air. Diddy's family in the gallery broke down in tears. His son stared blankly at the floor. His daughters covered their faces, unable to watch their father crumble. Diddy's body tensed. His hands gripped the edge of the table, his breathing sharp and shallow. No, this can't be right, he whispered, shaking his head. His lawyer leaned in, whispering something back, but Diddy wasn't listening anymore. His mind was spiraling. The confident mogul who once moved with calculated precision now looked like a man drowning in disbelief. The sentence was brutal, and the shock on Diddy's face said it all. His entire empire, his reputation, his freedom, his legacy, had just been torn apart in front of him. His lawyer immediately jumped to his feet, addressing the judge in a tone that was both urgent and desperate. Your Honor, with all due respect, we intend...
He's going to say it too. He says, I let down my community. I wanted to show we could take care of our own problems. I got lost. I'm not this bad person. I'm sorry to my community. I let you all down. People can change. I know I've changed. There is a part about this, Joe, and he goes, sometimes you have to go through life experiences. These are not excuses. I can't change the past, but I can change the future. I beg your honor for mercy to be a father again, to be a son again, a leader in my community again, to get the help I need. Now, Joe, look, we're criticizing parts of this from a legal point of view, from a human point of view. Could the judge be persuaded that this is a guy who's really learned his lesson, that could be a force of good, that he wasn't convicted of racketeering and sex trafficking, that while transportation to engage in prostitution is a serious crime, and there were elements of violence and drugs that were a part of it, and this happened many times, that perhaps he should not have to spend a significant portion of his life now in prison?
Here's what I say, at the risk of coming off like I'm banging on Diddy, and this is not a banging, Diddy day kind of thing for me. But if he's learned his lesson in 14 months, he'll learn it better in 2 or 3 years. And so what that means is there's got to be another reason over and above him learning his lesson. That's part of it. But over and above him learning his lesson, for him to be released more sooner than later. And that could be the force of good that he could be. I don't want to minimize that. I don't want to minimize the fact that he's, he's got ingenuity. He's creative. He has a huge platform. Everybody's going to be watching the things that he does next. And so that would have to be more the reason to let him get out earlier, because again, he knows how to succeed. And in all of these areas where he says, because of, he lost his father and it made him more likely to be a domestic abuser or whatever that was, he overcame the odds in so many other ways. So that doesn't fly either. So it's really gotta be his ability to do something maybe that almost nobody else could do coming from this situation. So I'm not gonna minimize the power of that and how the judge may evaluate that, but it's going to have to be that even more than just learning the lesson.
He just said, I don't want to let God down. I have no one to blame but myself. I know I will never put my hands on another person again. I'm willing to comply with any conditions. Me sharing my story is not a scheme to get less time. This story is tragic. If Your Honor gives me a chance to share my story, this has a positive impact. Thank you to the jury. Your Honor gave me the confidence in the jury to believe that I did not have to testify. They sacrificed 8 weeks. I thank them. I thank them for not guilty. Serena, back to you. Your thoughts on this?
Well, here's the thing. Sean Diddy Combs always had a platform to tell his story. He didn't need to be convicted of heinous crimes to be able to inspire people and use his power for good. I feel it's such a shame that somebody who did come from such a difficult and broken background and was able to pursue his dreams and get there, then turned around and used it to manipulate people, to harm people who are very vulnerable to him. And he used his power for bad. Maybe he did some good things. Maybe his children love him. That's true. But there are many, many convicted felons with children who were innocent and are always going to be innocent, waiting for their fathers or mothers to come home. He's not unique.
To file an immediate appeal. This ruling will be challenged. We believe there have been procedural errors and we are requesting an emergency stay of sentencing. But the judge didn't flinch. He looked directly at Diddy, his voice unwavering. You may file your appeal, but this sentence stands as of now. Mr. Combs, you will be remanded into custody immediately. The words hit Diddy like a punch to the gut. His head dropped into his hands. The man who once commanded entire boardrooms and red carpets was now visibly breaking down in front of the world. Tears welled in his eyes as guards began to move closer. The courtroom, once filled with quiet awe of his power, was now heavy with pity, shock, and whispers. Diddy's lawyer began frantically gathering documents, calling over paralegals, motioning for assistance to prepare the appeal paperwork immediately. He was on the phone within seconds, contacting senior partners, legal strategists, anyone who could pull a string or find a loophole. Diddy, however, sat motionless. His hands shook, his lips moved in silent disbelief. He had built his entire life on controlling his...
Combs is really where it started to kind of pick up in terms of the emotions again, where she immediately started crying. And I can only imagine how that feels to speak in front of not only the judge, but in front of your father, in front of a whole bunch of people in the media who want to hear what the kids have to say. Because even though we saw them inside the courtroom, Jesse, even though we've seen them in passing in the cafeteria and other things like that, this is the first time we're really kind of hearing them speak about how their lives have been impacted by Sean Combs's the allegations that have been against him and the conduct, all of that stuff. But they said right up the front, they were like, we're not here to make excuses for him. We aren't here to excuse his mistakes. We need him in our lives. Jesse Combs talking about how she lost her mom, that her mom being Kim Porter when she was very young, and that Sean Combs promised to be there to keep them safe. Then Chance Combs spoke afterwards, and she said that we're just daughters who need our father. When we talk, he speaks with a clear mind now. He's more patient. He's thoughtful. He wants to be a better man. He wants to be a better father. He's parented our 2-year-old sister from jail, and I see glimpses of our father during that. She said our sister deserves, and that the sister being 2-year-old Love, deserves a father who is present to teach her how to ride a bike, to tuck her in at night before she goes to bed, something that all kids want from their parents, right? Then Delilah Combs afterwards spoke after Chance. She said that we're scared of the thought of not having our mom and our dad in our life. And she says that these are the years that we'll never get back. She says, I know that missing years hurt because we lost our mom and they've already lost so much. So really that was kind of a time where we were really kind of seeing everyone get a little emotional in terms of people on the defendant's side. Sean Combs himself, I think it was a moment where we were kind of seeing him inside the courtroom at the defense table really kind of turn and look at his children. Kind of hard for him to keep a straight face with that. Like, he was so emotional, which I understand. He's a father, and he's a father to many children, and the kids have gone through a lot in their life. And so it was very emotional, Jesse. I can definitely say that. It was a lot of tears inside the gallery, especially on Sean Combs' side, but definitely from Sean Combs himself, too. He was very emotional while his kids were speaking.
There's a lot at stake today. It's not surprising you're seeing this. By the way, before I ask you something else, I just have to let you know, the amount of love that you're getting online is quite palpable. Basti failed. Greetings, my queen. We love you in Germany. Christina Lester, super chat comment, who's been great today. Tell Elizabeth her skin is glowing as per usual. Nikki Hayes, how are you, Elizabeth? We heart and appreciate you. Anto Grego, beautiful Jesse and Queen Elizabeth. Love you guys. You make a great team. Maylin Bourbon, oh, how I missed the chat, the lunchtime show, and the Long Crime team and panel. Long Crime, thank you for all your hard work. So, and super chat question from Mike. What's the update? Well, I think Elizabeth just laid out the entire update. I will ask you this. There was a question from the lone medic. How long does Elizabeth think Diddy will be sentenced for? Wasn't there a comment today, Elizabeth, from the judge that he does not see any reason to deviate from the guidelines of what, 5 to 7 years?
Yes, and so there was a lot.
His music, his empire, but in this room, he had none. The guard stepped closer, placing a hand on his shoulder. Diddy flinched, his head jerking up in disbelief. You can't do this to me, he said, his voice cracking. I'm not supposed to be here. This isn't supposed to happen like this. But no one responded. The judge had already left the bench, and the courtroom buzzed with the noise of reporters rushing to file their breaking stories. Diddy sentenced to years behind bars. Music mogul's downfall. Justice finally served. The headlines practically wrote themselves. Outside, crowds gathered, some fans shouting in disbelief, others saying this was long overdue. The world was watching every second of his collapse. Inside, Diddy's lawyer was doing everything possible to delay what was already inevitable. "We're filing it now," he said under his breath, flipping through papers with shaking hands. "Just stay calm." But Diddy wasn't calm. His breathing was uneven, his face pale. He could feel it, the walls closing in, the sound of shackles clinking nearby. He whispered, "Get me out of here. Do whatever it takes."
Maybe 5 to 7. I don't know yet. What can happen any second, but I think we're looking at significant prison time here.
Yeah, I mean, I think the judge makes an incredible note that, you've had the chance to deter. You were not deterred. You were given an opportunity over and over again, specifically during the investigation, and you can't be stopped. And if you can't be stopped, I'm going to have to be the one to stop you.
Yep. And by the way, the judge has considered his history. He said about the fact that, he became Sean Combs after his father died. That is especially impressive given the early and violent death of your father and the trauma that must have left. So he's appreciating all this, but at the same time, he's hitting all of the factors and he's talking about the evidence that came out during the course of this trial. He just said, Jane says he told her, take this pill, go out there, bleep his bleep him, I don't care. The court is not convinced this would not happen again. The court has considered the programs. They are outweighed by the trial record in this case. Now I'm wondering here, Joe, are we talking double digits?
I think we're going a little higher. We'll see how high we go. But 5 to 7 at least, and maybe even a little bit more. That's what it's sounding like. And there's an argument that the record supports that. Diddy was extra arrogant, and the length of time, I think, is incredibly persuasive and moving for the judge. Obviously, this is not something that happened once or twice and he got his hand caught in the cookie jar. This was built into what Diddy did. This was his culture, and he was truly lawless, just to put it where it really is. And so, the judge has been very honest about, I don't think that this deters you. And, I tell you, that tracks with me. Maybe we're all wrong, but to go off of what we've had happen and had said and had done and the trial record, that's not unreasonable for the judge to say that.
I am wondering also, Serena, if this is grounds for an appeal, where the court says, I'm not sentencing you on racketeering or sex. Okay, hold on. Here we go. Exploitation and violence against women must be met with real accountability to promote respect for the law. Okay, hold on 1 second. I'm getting the sentence right now. Okay, here we go. Oh boy.
I'm sweating.
Exploitation and violence against women must be met with real accountability to promote respect for the law. The court reaches a few conclusions. 135 months would be more than necessary. Now, I don't know if that means that that's the actual sentence right now, but 135 months is over 11 years in prison. So over 11 years in prison would be more than necessary. That's what the judge is saying here, Serena. I don't know if that's the official sentence as of yet. We're waiting to get confirmation about that. But what does that say?
Well, just to throw that number out there like that means that at least he was considering the 11 years that the prosecution put forth, and maybe even more than that. It sounds like he's kind of tempering it, like that is more than necessary and it'll be less than the 11. But it also sounds like he at least considered it very seriously as an option.
Now I'm wondering, Sierra, are we talking 7 years? I mean, again, it's something we talked about earlier. Maybe the benefit of the family speaking and the benefit of the work that he's done was not to get to 11 years.
I can't go in there. The lawyer nodded, speaking quickly to a court officer, asking for temporary leniency while they filed the emergency appeal. But the officer's response was firm. He's going into custody. There's no delay. And that was it. The moment Diddy stood, the courtroom went silent again. The guards placed the cuffs on his wrists, the sound of metal clicking against metal echoing through the room. His lawyer followed close behind, papers in hand, still muttering about the appeal, still trying to project some sense of control. But the look in Diddy's eyes said it all. He was terrified. The man who once partied with presidents and billionaires was now walking toward a prison van, his future uncertain, his freedom gone. Outside, cameras flashed nonstop. His lawyer stepped up to the podium, voice firm but tired. "We are immediately filing an appeal of this sentencing. We maintain Mr. Combs' innocence and believe the court has made significant errors in its judgment. This is not the end of the fight." But to everyone watching, it already looked like the end. Diddy's expression,
"I didn't mean to hurt you. I would like to apologize to all of the victims of domestic violence too." So really, I think from the defense's perspective, I think that their whole kind of strategy in a way, Jesse, was to kind of get in front of the whole domestic violence aspect, something that I think that they knew the judge would take into consideration eventually when he would sentence him. And so even when Sean Combs was speaking, he said, "It'll always be a burden that I'll have to carry. My actions were shameful and disgusting. I was out of control. I needed help. I didn't get the help." He said, "I got lost in my journey of life. I'm not this larger than life person. I got lost in the excess. I got lost in my ego. I lost all of my businesses, my career, my reputation. I lost myself, my self-respect. I've been humble. I hate myself right now. I've been stripped down to nothing." But I think one big thing, Jesse, one notable thing that he was really kind of getting choked up on his words when he was giving his speech is when he stood up, or he was already standing up when he was giving his impact statement, but when he turned around to his family, specifically his children, he was getting very choked up. He said, "I failed y'all as a father. You deserve better." Even though talking to his mother, where he said, "To my mother, I failed you as a son. I'm sorry." He said, "I failed my community. I wanted to be a shining example of what people could do, what we could do. If given a chance, another chance," you know, he wanted to explain to the judge that people can change. And even towards the end of his speech, Jesse, he was saying, you know, "I thank the jury for my acquittal," but he still says, "I take my Mann Act convictions very seriously. I want you to make an example of what a person can do if they're given another chance." Because from the government's perspective, they were hoping that the judge would kind of make a case out of Sean Combs, especially given his wealth, especially given his clout, and the fact that the government alleged that his conduct had been going on for such a long amount of time. And so what Sean Combs said in response to that was, "I would never jeopardize being away from my family, no matter what anyone says." And I think that was kind of a little snide to the government there. He says, "No matter what anyone says, I'm truly sorry." And so it felt apologetic. It did feel, to your point, Jesse, a little repetitive of the letter that he had already sent to the judge. And honestly, Jesse, it felt kind of a little similar to the apology video after the Intercontinental Hotel video had dropped too. But it seemed like he was remorseful for his actions.
That's really interesting you say that, because look, from a legal point of view, I thought it was significant that he mentioned the victims. At first, I thought he was trying to apologize for everything in a way where he wasn't directly admitting to his convictions. But he did say at the end, "I take responsibility for my Mann Act convictions." I thought he might not say that directly. Like, he didn't say, "I'm sorry I transported these women across state lines for the purposes of sex work." He wasn't that specific. But the fact that he did apologize for the Mann Act convictions, I thought was significant, considering some would say, oh, he may not want to jeopardize his appeal. He may not want to admit fully that he committed these crimes. But he did, in a sense. The question I had was, and you tell me, did it seem genuine? Because reading it, it felt like he was very remorseful, and him saying that he doesn't want to be made an example of about what he did, but make an example of me about what I can do, given a second chance. It felt remorseful to me. It felt credible, but I wasn't in the courtroom. I don't know. You tell me.
Yeah, I think kind of from the defense's perspective, it really was kind of pulling at the heartstrings to really kind of bring out the tears in a sense. So to me, it did feel a little bit that he was remorseful, but at the same time, it did also feel like this was just everything that had already been said in the many of court filings that were already submitted to the judge. And then I felt like it felt a little disingenuous at times in terms of just the language that was used, because it was so similar to not only just the letter, but to the apology video too. And so I felt like the tone was to reach for just the heartstrings. So I felt like overall, Jesse, I think he was remorseful, but I don't know if it was remorse because of his actions and the pain that he's caused to people, or it's because he's been sitting in a jail cell for the last 12 months.
Well, then we came to the judge.
Was hollow, his body language defeated. He glanced toward his family one last time before being led away. His mother was crying uncontrollably. His sons stood motionless, their faces blank. It was the image of an empire crumbling in slow motion. Back in the legal offices, phones rang off the hook. Lawyers drafted motions, drafted emergency petitions, anything that might keep Diddy out of prison while the appeal went through. We can try for a stay, one said. We can push for reconsideration. Another voice cut in sharply. This is going to be tough. The evidence is stacked. Meanwhile, inside the holding cell, Diddy sat alone, staring at the wall. For the first time in decades, he had no entourage, no assistants, no team of advisors, just silence. He whispered to himself, I'm getting out. I'm not staying here. They can't keep me here. But the reality was sinking in, the guards outside the door, the concrete walls, the sound of the lock clicking shut. It was all real. By nightfall, news outlets across the globe ran the story nonstop. The downfall of Diddy had officially become a media spectacle. Social media was on fire, some defending him, others celebrating the verdict. Old collaborators distanced themselves. Brands began pulling sponsorships. The same people who once praised his empire now treated his name like poison. His legal team worked through the night. By morning, they announced that the appeal had been officially filed. We will fight this with everything we have, the lead attorney told reporters. Mr. Combs remained strong and committed to clearing his name, but behind closed doors, Diddy wasn't strong. Insiders described him as erratic, restless, panicked, unable to sleep, pacing back and forth, demanding updates every hour. The mogul who once ruled every room he walked into now found himself begging his lawyers for updates, his tone breaking every few sentences. Tell me there's a way, he said over the phone, his voice trembling. Tell me I'm getting out. His lawyer paused before responding. We're doing everything we can, Sean, but right now, we have to wait for the appellate court's decision. For now, Diddy's world was silent, his empire, frozen, his freedom, hanging by a thread, his lawyers, racing against time. The mogul who once had it all was now left with nothing but fear, panic, and the fading hope that somehow, against all odds, the appeal would save him from the cage that had finally closed around him.